Hello and welcome to the Ultimate Escape Podcast. I'm your host, Hayden Parrish. And in this episode, it's a conversation with Steve Holladay about emotions. And this is a follow-up to our previous episode, episode 3, where we talked about where emotions come from, how they're hardwired into God's creation in us. And this episode is about how to properly process our emotions. Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoy. Ultimate Escape is a family-friendly ministry that addresses sexuality. Some episodes may contain sensitive terms and subject matter, especially for younger children. All right, Steve, this is part 2 of our previous conversation. And we started and talked a little bit about a dashboard and how the lights on a dashboard show us something. They're trying to tell us something as we're driving down the road. Do you want to speak more about that and how that deals with emotion, just to kind of recap? Yeah,
so I use the phrase emotions are like the indicator lights on the dashboard. You know, when they come on, they're designed to get our attention. We talked about the fact that it's not bad that they come on. It's actually good that they come on, because if they didn't come on, then we would be oblivious to the situation that needs our attention. And so, each individual light communicates specific information, and each emotion is telling us specific stuff. And if I don't know which emotion I'm feeling, then I don't know what the situation is that I need to. I know there's a light on the dashboard, but if I don't look down and see which light it is, then I'm going to be really confused on what needs attention.
Yeah. So emotions aren't negative; they're good, because you need to know, hey, it's time for me to get gas, or it's time for me to change my oil. There's going to be calamity if I don't change my oil.
It's good to know it, even if the situation is not, comfortable to have to deal with.
Sure. And so we left the sticky note on the board as we were talking about this, like, well, how do we appropriately deal with this? And then how does this express itself normally in people? And people, of course, deal with their emotions differently, but in positive and negative ways. And so how do you see that with your clients, or as you kind of navigate some of this for yourself?
Yeah. So a number of different things. One, dealing with emotion can be scary. It can be really painful. It's like, if I'm on this side of the river, I know I've got to get through the river, because where I want to be is the other side. But I can't get to the other side without going through the river. Now, for those who are thinking fast, well, you could take a helicopter. Okay, we don't have a helicopter in this scenario. I'm standing on the bank. I don't have a boat. I don't have a helicopter. There's not a bridge. I want to get to the other side. The only option is I've got to go through the river. And for a lot of people, starting to wade into the depth of their emotion is just overwhelming. I've had people share that they feel like if they start crying, they'll never be able to stop. So the idea, it'll just consume me, it'll be overwhelming, can generate a lot of additional fear. It's going to hurt so bad that I won't be able to handle it, which is a legitimate fear. Some emotion is painful when we feel it. I mean, hurt is called hurt because it hurts. I mean, when we are connected with hurt, literally, we hurt. It can be debilitating to think of dealing with the things that have scared me so much. And when people live through trauma, a normal response to trauma is to try to disconnect from emotion, especially people who live through sexual trauma. Think of a 4th grade girl who, beginning when she was 3, has been raped by a stepfather over and over, year after year after year. That little girl grows up. Now she's 25, and she's coming in for counseling. And the thought of reconnecting with that level of hurt and fear and shame is just, it's overwhelming. And it keeps a lot of people from starting a journey of healing, because there's so much fear of engaging those emotions. So I'm just saying it's a legitimate, normal source of resistance to a healing journey of having to deal with the emotional piece of it. People can often come in and share their story. They can talk about the trauma. They can recount the behavioral part of it. And they do that completely detached from any emotion. It's once the emotion starts to be reconnected, that's when it gets really difficult. And so many times people will spend their lifetime numbing out or trying to medicate emotion instead of actually processing it. I would argue that a lot of addiction is driven by that right there. I don't like how I feel if I feel something. And so let me do something to escape or numb out the emotional pain. And for a lot of people, that it becomes sexual acting out with us looking at porn or masturbation and fantasy, hookup culture, just one hookup after another. If we go to the core of what drives that behavior, again, go back to this thought, feeling, behavior triangle we've talked about. Emotion is a part of that. I'm not saying it's all trying to numb out emotion, because there's the beliefs piece of that triangle also. But from the emotion side, it's so painful, I just want to numb out to it. So let's get to the question you asked of how do you process it? Because that's the river that we need to go through if I want to get to the other side to be a healthy person from an emotion standpoint.
Hey, before you answer that question, help me understand the idea of, well, it feels like I'm angry at somebody. Here's an example. I'm angry at somebody and I don't want to deal with that. And so I'm just going to distract myself, because you can often go down the road of addiction, but it could be as simple as I'm just going to distract myself from this. I think the short term is I don't have to feel that emotion right now, but what are the consequences of not dealing with that emotion? Like just kind of holding it in.
Internally, and again, this would be a medical expert that would have to speak to this in its depth. Internally, the body holding all that energy is going to start to do damage to the body. Oftentimes it comes out as digestive issue. It may come out as panic attacks, but that energy, we can only clamp that down and hold it in for so long. It's going to do damage internally, or it's going to leak out sideways. You mentioned angry at somebody, so I'm going to distract myself. Well, that anger doesn't go away. Actually, that anger stays in there and it magnifies. It's like a laser. That the light source inside, it's trapped inside. So it just gets bigger and bigger and more intense until eventually it comes out. Well, when it comes out, there's an enormous amount of energy that's coming out, and it can have a huge effect. It can be very damaging, depending on what it's directed at. So when all my emotional energy starts leaking out sideways, it's like I had a bad day at the office. I come home, and in the first 2 minutes, I've unleashed on my spouse, on my kids, and I've kicked the dog twice. It's just coming out at objects that we're safer directing it at. Or if it's the 5-year-old who's being abused by a parent at home, well, the 5-year-old goes to school, and there's another 5-year-old that is not physically threatening, and so their aggression comes out toward the safe playmate, as opposed to I'm confronting my parent or telling my parent that I don't like the way that they're abusing me. And so oftentimes things come out at people who we feel safe directing that energy toward, because we can't direct it at the person who it should be directed at the actual source, because either it's not safe or we love that person. And we talked in the previous episode, that cognitive dissonance, that mental friction. I love this person, but that person is hurting me. Well, the brain doesn't know what to do with that. And so one way to deal with, not really deal with it, but to kick the can down the road, so to speak, I tell myself, well, what they're not really doing it. That's not really happening. I live in denial, or it's not really so bad. I minimize it. Or I let all that energy out at somebody who's completely not connected to it.
Yeah.
But at least now my energy is being released until the next time I'm hurt.
Yeah.
And then we just get into the cycle.
Sure. Sure. And so tell me, we started to go down that road. What are the healthy ways of processing some of these? It could be anger. It could be some other sort of trauma that someone did. How do you start
Well,
that path?
number one, I've got to identify it, because if I don't know which light on the dashboard is on, then I don't know the right path to take to address it. So I need to identify what is it that I'm feeling. Again, people coming in from a trauma background, if there's a lot of emotion that we've just stuffed, when you open the lid on that box, it's hard to differentiate what emotions, because it's all just, at this point, it's like a plate of spaghetti. They're all just intertwined, and sometimes they get connected together. And so when I feel hurt, well, if my hurt has happened and I've also been very lonely, so I'm a person who has been abused and felt lonely in the abuse, anytime they feel lonely, hurt comes up too. Or anytime they feel hurt, lonely comes up too. So they can't differentiate what it is based on just how they feel. So it's very normal for people to not be able to tell what they feel based on the feeling. We've got to back into it from the thinking side of the corner or of the triangle. But end of the day, I've got to be able to identify what it is that I feel. And then each one of those we process different. For example, sad. How I process sad, what's the loss? Because sad is I've lost something of value. I think I left that out. I was running through the list of I think I neglected to mention sad. Okay, sad is I've lost something I valued. Now it can be I valued it really big, or it held just a little bit of value. Back when I mentioned before in another episode, we used to live in the Dallas area, in Allen, Texas, and there was a Brahms. Now, for people who don't know Brahms, it's a kind of a regional dairy.
Okay.
You go to Brahms. Okay. Yeah. Go to Brahms and, you think Baskin Robbins,
Okay.
Baskin Robbins and McDonald's had a baby, and Brahms, really good ice cream. Now you can get, hot dogs and burgers and chicken fingers and stuff also, but, it basically is an ice cream shop. Oh, they had one right around the corner from our house. I would walk to Brahms, get an ice cream cone, and walk back home. Well, if I drop my ice cream cone on the sidewalk, listen, I'm an ice cream fan. I like ice cream. So I'm sad. But it's a different sad than if someone that I really was close to died. Those are two different intensities of sad, but it's the same feeling. It's sad. How do I process sad? Well, number one, identify the loss. Okay, so loss is my ice cream cone. Next, can it be replaced? Yes. Like I've still got cash in my pocket and Brahms is still right around the corner. I just walk back to Brahms, buy another of the exact same kind of ice cream. Boom. My sad is now gone because I've replaced what I lost. But sometimes what we've lost can't be replaced. If it's a relationship, I can't just go manufacture another one of those people. So when I can't replace it, what are my options? Well, I can't replace it with an exact replica, but is there another person who can fill that role? And so sometimes I need to form a new relationship with someone who will serve that role in my life. And so if it's a parent died, who are the mentors? So if I'm involved in a local church, are there people at church who are in that generation who they can become like a surrogate parent? Or do I have a mentor who feels, it's somebody who's been in my life already, so I don't have to make a new relationship, but is it somebody who I can move that relationship from the status that it was into more of a parent role model for me? It's not the exact same book on the shelf, but it's a book of the same genre that's now on the shelf. And sometimes I can't even do that. I can't replace. And so it's how do I honor the loss? I think you have met Legend at some point before we had to have Legend put down back in March of 2024. Legend was a huge part of my ministry for 8 years. I mean, we traveled, in addition to her becoming my service dog in the latter years, we traveled all over the States and into Canada. And she was in my counseling room. I mean, I had clients who, if Legend wasn't there a particular day, they were mad at me. Like, legitimately, they were mad that Legend wasn't with me. So she's a huge role in the ministry.
Yeah.
So when we had to have her put down, I retired her service dog vest and her service dog ID, and I hung them on my wall in my office. It's a way to honor the loss and the significance that Legend served. So that's just an example. I've had people who have lost pets. One way to honor that loss is they knew the pet was going to have to be put down, and so they had a photographer come in and took photos. And they picked out a special one, and they had a print made of it. So that's kind of a roadmap of how do we process sadness, identify the loss. Can it be replaced? If so, replace it. If not, how do I redeem that loss in maybe a different variety, like a different relationship, but it fills the same hole. Yeah. And when I can't redeem it, I can't replace it. It's just a loss. What can I do to honor the loss and be able to process through the emotion of it? A lot of processing sadness is tears. I mean, God wired us that when we're sad, tears generally want to well up in our eyes, and allowing the body to release those tears is a helpful part of the processing. Did you ever happen to run across the study of tears that was done probably 15, 20 years ago? No. I did not know about it when it first came out, but somebody alerted me to it. And I read through some of basically tears that are like empathy tears, or you're watching a Disney movie and a sad scene comes on and, the tears come up. It's just saline. It's salt water. But tears that are coming from the depth of our grief, they're different in their chemical makeup. They're actually toxic. God wired us with a way to get that. Here's my big clinical word for the day: junk, that gunk. Okay. God wired our body with a way to get that stuff inside that doesn't need to stay there, a way for it to come out. And tears is one of the ways that we get that, the stuff driving that sadness actually has a way to get out of the body. Now, how we deal with fear looks totally different than how we deal with sad. And so each one of these emotions, there's a different process because fear, my security feels threatened. Okay. Number one, let's figure out, is this real or not? I mentioned that I let the dogs go out. Okay. Let's establish, is there really somebody trying to break into my house or not? If I can rule out, that it's a realistic threat, okay, then now my fear is resolved because I know I'm safe. If it's a real threat, what do I need to do? Because sometimes I need to build a fortress to secure my safety. Sometimes I need to neutralize the threat. So how we respond is different based on what the individual threat is. And people are wired differently. There are people who are wired, we've heard the term fight or flight, throw freeze in there, because any of those three, and however we're wired is just how we're wired. I am not wired for the fight thing. I am definitely a freeze and pretend it's not there. If the world can be collapsing around me, but as long as I'm not paying attention to it, I feel fine. Not really, but I tell you, that's the defense mechanism. I'm okay as long as I can't see what's happening. Or if I just freeze, maybe this whole thing will just go away and then I'll be okay. But there are other people who are wired differently. Holly is not wired the same way I am. I did not marry a freeze person. I married a fight person. And so Holly is let's just confront it. Let's deal with it and then move past it and we're good. And so depending on how we're wired with that default response is largely how we're going to address fear. Because people who are the fight of the fight or flight or freeze, they're going to typically go after whatever the threat is. And sometimes that's sufficient. I mean, you think of military, neutralize the threat. Hey, and then the threat's gone and now we're safe. That is an approach, but some people are not wired to do that.
Sure.
And so to say to them, hey, you just need to go and basically attack this thing that's threatening you is an unrealistic thing to expect. And so how I would process fear is probably going to look different than how my wife processes fear. And so I'm just saying we need to recognize that people are going to deal with some emotions very differently, and that's okay. I don't need to try to make somebody else process emotion the exact same way that I do.
You know, the other day I watched my team lose a big game, and I found myself really angry. And to the point where, like, am I losing sleep because of this? This is affecting my sleep because of a football game. I'm not going to say who my team is, or because this needs to be timeless podcast. So, but this is relevant to me right now. But just it helped me identify a place in my life that needed some redemption. I'm like, I shouldn't be so angry about a football game.
So if we run it through the litmus test, first of all, what was the injustice? What's not fair?
Yeah. Well, I thought it wasn't fair. We lost. So,
okay. So I'm hearing a level of now, again, just run it through the litmus test. Is there anything in addition to it's not fair? Meaning there may be anger at my
I think
team
I had
lost.
an unmet expectation. Hey, we were going to be good, and obviously we're not that good.
Okay,
maybe it was a loss of a dream.
There, that's where I was wondering is there loss in the picture also?
Yeah.
So there's probably a layer of anger, and a layer of sad.
Yeah.
Now here's a question to ask. Give me a percent. Sitting here right now, logic hat on. Percent of it that wasn't fair, and percent of it that was a loss of a hope.
Oh, it was definitely a loss of a hope. Now that I'm speaking it out, but it came out as like, I'm hot. Like I don't want to sleep, those sorts of things. I'm fine now, but it's like, it did point as like, hey, it's kind of off balance in my life right now. So,
but again, to me, that's a perfect example of, hey, I get hit with two emotions. I can identify one faster than I do the other. And so that's the one I identify. And it feels like I'm feeling this.
Yeah.
I would just say, welcome to humanity. That's that's the way we operate, because we get hit with, rarely does any emotion occur in a vacuum of just that one emotion. Most things are multifaceted. And so I've got, hey, it didn't feel fair. And man, I thought we were going to be really good this year, but maybe we're not. And I've got loss. And then, potentially there could be some other things, depending on who the person is, there could be other layers to that also.
Sure. Yeah.
And so just that, to at minimum be able to recognize, hey, there are multiple emotions that are creating the level of energy that I feel. And sometimes that helps figure out, why is the energy level so high?
Sure.
Well, because there's more emotion here than I realized there was.
So how do we manage, like, I'm feeling an emotion in a moment, and particularly when I'm around other people, maybe my children or my spouse or people that work with me or whoever, and realizing, I'm feeling this, and I'm not quite sure if my feeling is justified or where it's coming from. How do you, I think in the rearview mirror, like we're doing right now, I can sort of see that, hey, the tensions aren't so high. So how do you do that, but also not push that on somebody else? I think anger is a perfect example of, like, I'm hot. I don't know exactly why, but it's coming out and it's affecting the people maybe that I love the most.
So here are probably a couple of things that at least are in that picture. One, emotion that we haven't processed in the past. It's like our baggage. It stays with us. And when it gets triggered, then the emotion we're feeling in the moment is bigger than the actual emotion of the moment.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty normal thing. Now, add to that, look through a trauma lens. Okay, people who have experienced trauma in their life, and the emotion related to the trauma didn't get processed. And especially if we are shutting down from emotion, then we're just adding to it. We mentioned those 8 feeling words. Okay, so think of 8 ping pong balls. I wish now I brought with me some ping pong balls, but and we take a black Sharpie marker, and on each ping pong ball we're going to write one of those words. Okay, so I write glad, shame, hurt, lonely, or 8 ping pong balls. Mm-hmm. At any moment of any day, something happens. My team loses. Okay, ping pong ball of anger. Man, they shouldn't have lost. It wasn't fair that they lost. Ping pong ball of anger hits us in the head. Ping pong ball of sad hits in the head. Man, I'm sad that they're not better than I looks like they are. But if we've lived years and years of unprocessed emotion, attached to that ping pong ball that says anger, is now a bowling ball of emotion. Because when we don't process emotion, it all just goes into emotion.
Yeah, I think we assume it's there, but just still the same size. But you're saying, hey, it's growing larger.
Because every day we numb out emotion instead of processing emotion, and it just gets poured into the bowling ball. So now that little ping pong ball falls off because in the moment, there's the in the moment amount of emotion, but there's a string from the little ping pong ball to the bowling ball. And when the ping pong ball falls off, the bowling ball also falls off. Well, when we get hit with a ping pong ball and a bowling ball, we don't notice the ping pong ball.
Yeah.
Because in comparison, all we notice is the bowling ball. Well, when we get hit in the head with a bowling ball, we're going to have a big response because that's a lot of pain. And appropriately so, that we have a big response. But if we think, or if a bystander watching us thinks that our response is from the ping pong ball, it looks completely out of proportion. And I'm just saying that oftentimes our own emotion, we're responding to the bowling ball that we don't even know there's a bowling ball there.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. One of the practices I found helpful last year, I did a daily examine practice. So if you don't know what an examine practice is, it's instead of being responsive, it's kind of a reflection on what's happened that day. And so there's a range of questions from what brought you joy, where did you see God, to hey, what was a spot of dissatisfaction in your day, and often, and I did this every day for a year. It was, I think last year I did this, and it was interesting. A pattern formed pretty quickly, and that I didn't even realize of a particular emotion and it was anger. And I was like, I don't feel like an angry person, but here I am with documentation. Hey, I'm feeling this on a regular basis, and it really helped me start to unpack some of those. Hey, where are those places that this is cropping up, and where is this from? And what are other practices that you would suggest, or resources that you would suggest for people? Like how do I deal with these emotions in a healthy way?
Well, number one, the exercise you described, it sounds enormously healthy. I mean, I can only imagine the impact of every day just paying attention to what are the emotions in me? What are they communicating? That's enormously healthy exercise right there. As far as resources, with around this topic, I highly recommend Dr. Chip Dodd's book, Voice of the Heart. Is where those 8 words you mentioned in the previous episode, the part 1 of the emotions here, that book and that list of 8 core feeling words. he does a great, really deep dive into each one of those 8 feelings. And so just as a resource of where to get more information and understand more of the processing, I highly recommend that book, Voice of the Heart. Being able to figure out what are the thoughts connected that are creating the emotion. Because as a general rule, on that thought, feeling, behavior triangle, the thought or belief. Okay, so thought is a conscious thought. I'm aware that I'm thinking it. Belief is the deeper subconscious. It's there. Mm-hmm. I'm just not aware that belief is in there. Being able to connect. What is the thought that's generating? So as you're describing anger, okay, what's the belief or the thought that's connected to the anger? Again, if it's actually anger, then there's going to be a thought somewhere around, this isn't right, this isn't fair, this shouldn't be happening. Like it's an injustice. So identify what is the injustice. Now, what do I do about it? Okay, Jesus is in the temple. He's made his cord or his whip. He's flipped over the tables. He's driven them out of the temple. Okay, that was his response to the injustice. I'm gonna get these people out of here so they can't continue to make my Father's house a den of thieves. Sometimes we can address an injustice and correct it. Sometimes we can't. Sometimes the best we can do is give attention to the injustice and encourage people who have the ability to fix it, encourage them to fix it. A lot of people, are for a cause and spend a good bit of their life and their energy trying to help make a dent in a big cause. That's a helpful way to channel anger is it becomes passion for correcting an injustice. But then there's some things that we are powerless to do anything about. The 4-year-old who is being abused week after week in their home is powerless to do anything about it. They can't fix it. And so then what do we have the ability to do? And sometimes we can exercise our voice. Exercising our voice may not stop the injustice, but it's healthy to be able to speak about the injustice. It gives that energy, at least it gives it a channel. It takes the energy out. Sometimes there are, surrogate activities that we do that aren't going to address the injustice, but at least it gives our body a way to burn through the energy in something that is a physical expression. And so sometimes anger exercises become a good option, especially in dealing with trauma and things that happened back then that the person who did it may not be around that I could address them. And what actually happened is long in the past, but I can do an exercise in my present right now that gives the me back then an option to do something physical. And so just a therapeutic anger exercise sometimes becomes helpful.
So explain a little bit more about that, the me back then. What do you mean by that?
So all of us, again, I'm sharing my perspective, my worldview. I'm not saying everybody has to agree with me. I'm just, here's how I see the world. All of us are a conglomeration of the us at different stages of our life. The 2-year-old me is in there. Tears want to start coming up right now when I start to identify the time period of my earliest sexual trauma. Because when I say the 4-year-old me, years, all these years later, having worked through a lot of this, and when I look at the 4-year-old me, there's still sadness that comes up. So that 4-year-old's still in there. The 10-year-old, the 20-year-old, so when something happened to us at a certain stage of life and we didn't know how to deal with it, or it wasn't safe to deal with. So the 12-year-old who is physically abused by a father, the 12-year-old, if he had said, hey, what you're doing is wrong, you need to stop that, the abuse might have been 3 times worse. And so the 12-year-old just, their perception was it's better off if I just take it and don't say anything. Well, the 12-year-old grows up and now the 12-year-old's 40. Well, the 12-year-old that was abused is still in the body of the 40-year-old man. And so for the 40-year-old to be able to go back and do an exercise that gives the 12-year-old a voice and gives the 12-year-old a physical behavior to address the injustice. All of a sudden now, all of that energy that just got locked in at age 12 and buried in a box, we've just taken the lid off the box and given that energy a healthy place to go. So it's not coming out and contaminating the present anymore. Now, that's a bird's eye view of what I'm talking about. But that's what I mean when I say the us back then that didn't get a chance to deal with a trauma now has a chance to deal with it in a healthy way.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense if you think about, hey, we often, the patterns of whatever unhealthy mechanisms of coping, they crop back up and you're like, hey, I've been doing this for a long time.
Because tomorrow happens and then the day after, and years have gone by, but we never knew how to do something different. So we just keep doing what we know to do.
Yeah. Steve, thank you so much again for sharing. Yeah.
Appreciate your help today. Thanks.